Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. What I get to do is introduce to you our speaker, and most of you already know her. Stacy Collins first attended this community 10 years ago. She was on a spiritual growth path and found us, and for better or worse, I was the one speaking the first Sunday she was here, and I didn't scare her off. 9 years ago, she began volunteering in our office, and we immediately saw what we had, and we hired her. And she's been on staff for 8 years, just growing and expanding with her willingness to serve this community in greater and greater levels of her service and leadership that we've needed. She became ordained this summer, and we're very happy to give her a rev in front of her name. And I'm happy also to announce that she has a new position here. I have needed help on the operations side of things. So we have created a new position called Executive Minister, and Stacy will be a great, great help to me and to all of us, in that she will be overseeing all of the operations side of our organization. It's a big, big job. It is. Thank you, Stacy. And she is a minister, and she is going to be holding both of these jobs in a beautiful way as she helps to lead and support our beautiful community. Please welcome your new executive minister, Reverend Stacy Collins.
Thank you all so much. I'm beyond grateful to be here with you today. And like Reverend Michael just said, it was 10 years ago, it'll be 10 years ago next month actually, that I attended this church for the first time. And when I came that first time, I sat way back there in the back, and I made sure to even get a seat over on the side because I wanted to maybe feel a little bit invisible if I needed to. And I didn't grow up in a religious home, and I had never been a part of a spiritual community before, so I didn't even know what I was hoping to get from this experience, or I really didn't know what to expect, but I knew that there was something here for me, something that I needed to hear. And so I sat there that entire service, and I was on the edge of my seat, both figuratively and literally. Figuratively, because like I said, I knew that there was something here for me that I needed to hear. And I literally stayed on the edge of my seat in case y'all got too weird. I was going to be able to make a quick exit. And you didn't get too weird. Well, you maybe got a little weird, not too weird for me, so I stayed. And as Reverend Michael said, he was speaking that day. And the things that he was saying, there is something in them that I knew to be true already. But I had never had the words to articulate that. And I didn't know that there was a whole framework of spiritual teachings and practices that I had access to. So now, 10 years later, what had I learned that day and in subsequent years, and taking classes from beautiful people like Elise Coffey and others, that has changed my life profoundly. Profoundly. So I am really humbled and honored to be here today. And I'm excited to talk to you about our third session in our Prosperity, our Financial Freedom series, right? We're going to talk about healing our false beliefs today. And the way I'm holding this, what a false belief is that it's any belief or story that you're telling yourself that disempowers instead of empowers you, that creates adversaries or enemies in your life, or that keeps you from experiencing a sense of freedom. Okay, so when I realized that I'm going to get up here and talk about false beliefs, I had the thought, I was sitting in my meditation chair, and I had the thought, if I'm going to get up here and talk about false beliefs around prosperity, I better go ahead. I don't want to. But take a look, take a peek at all the false beliefs that I've had throughout the years. And I have a little pad of paper there. So I said, I'll just hurry up and scribble these out. How many can there be in 48 years? How many times could I have gotten it wrong? Well, I quickly realized I was going to need a bigger piece of paper. It was like in the movie Jaws when the guy says, we're going to need a bigger boat. Thank you, Gary Dorian. Gary Dorian, thank you. But there they are. They're all churning in the water under there, right? So what I did take a look at them, and what I realized is that my beliefs about prosperity, my beliefs about abundance, cannot be separated out from or disconnected from my beliefs about who I think I am. And so what I mean by that is the stories that we tell ourselves about money when we experience financial discomfort, and that can be a sense of lack, but it can also be a sense of self-righteousness or judgment or pride or unworthiness, whatever it is that creates that discomfort, that those just aren't stories about money. Those are stories about who we think we are at the core of our being and how we think the world works. And so I realized that if I want to truly experience long-lasting financial freedom, I need to look into that stuff. Because the stories, while they may be false, the stories I tell, they contain a sacred gift in them. Because what they're doing, every time I don't believe I'm good enough, every time I believe I don't have enough, every time I believe I've got to hoard what I do have, it's telling me that there's some place within me that I believe that there's an obstacle to experiencing my own wholeness and abundance. And so if we know this, then we can begin to be maybe a little bit friendly with it. Because I don't know, obviously, your exact experience with prosperity or your relationship with money now or what it's been in your life. But I'm going to make a guess about you that you're human like me. That's a pretty accurate guess, right? And I you know what? While I'm on a roll, I'll just go ahead and guess that you were born to human parents. Right? Oh, am I 100% on that? Okay. And that those human parents had beliefs about money. And that your extended families, your teachers, your friends, your communities that you grew up in, that they also had beliefs about money. And I'm going to guess that that cute little human, innocent human being that you were and still are today, that you took on unknowingly some of those beliefs about money. And some of them were helpful, and some of them probably weren't so helpful. And so then as we get older and we begin to expand our lives a little bit more, go out into the big wide world, you may have, like me, found yourself brushing up against or being in relationships with people who had been raised with a very different experience around finances. You may have begun to feel that some of your beliefs were being challenged, and some of those you may have felt called to change. Some of them you may have clearly been able to see, I don't need that one anymore. Other ones maybe kept coming back up and were difficult, and maybe that's kind of what brought you to Unity. That's what brought me to Unity, is I knew something in my thinking wasn't working right. I knew that the way I was thinking was my problem, but I didn't know how to do it a different way. So I came here, and I engaged in a path of self-inquiry. So we have these beliefs, right, that we know about, and some that we know are healthy and aren't. But wait, there's more. Because what we also all have in common is that we have unconscious beliefs. Unconscious, uninvestigated beliefs that are just running under the surface like that Jaws was until, but we don't get music to let us know that they're coming up, right? We don't know they're coming up till we're good and mad or upset. And so those unconscious beliefs, some of them are particular to how you grew up and the environment you grew up in. And other ones are human beliefs that humans have been engaging in for thousands and thousands of years. Beliefs around survival, competition, success, what it means to have worth, who's in, who's out. And these beliefs are the key to all self-sabotage that tends to happen. Because you can spend a lot of time creating an elaborate vision board. You can have the best intentions, powerful affirmations, but if there is something within you that is unconsciously believing you don't deserve any of that stuff on that vision board, then guess what? You may be able to manifest it, but you're not going to be able to hang on to it. Or you may be able to manifest it, but you're going to say, why isn't this stuff making me happy? I thought I would feel completely fulfilled and happy when I got it. So just toss that up and throw that away. We don't need that vision board anymore. We just need a new vision board, right? Is that the problem? It's not the problem. The vision board isn't the problem. But the good news is about these unconscious beliefs, sounds kind of serious, right? Sounds kind of maybe even a little scary, is that they have no power over us once we make them conscious. Once we're willing to be brave and investigate them and to look to see, why am I telling the same story here? Is there truth in this? And when we do that, this is the path to spiritual transformation. It's a path to spiritual transformation. And I can tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not. And I know that sounds kind of serious. And sometimes it feels serious to me too, you know. I want to sometimes just have a petty argument and be allowed to just be mad about it and tell everybody how right I am. I don't want to look at myself anymore. I don't want another growth opportunity. I just want to be mad, right? Come on. Not everything has to be one. So one of the keys that I learned is that we can actually laugh at ourselves. We can hold things a little lightly sometimes. I don't know if anybody else didn't know this, but I thought I had to take myself really seriously. Was I the last one to find out that you didn't have to do this? That you don't have to look at yourself as one lifelong, arduous DIY project that picks up this part and then this part's falling apart over here. That I can actually use levity and lightness and catch myself in a story sometimes and say, oh, there I go again. And sometimes when we can do that, we can pry into some of those more stuck places because humor can open us up. So when I was a kid growing up in Indiana, my dad had 2 jobs for my entire childhood. By day, he worked on rebuilding and repairing train engines. And by night, he restored and rebuilt cars for people in the garage in our home. People would drag their beat up, barely limping along cars into our garage. And then weeks later, they would roll out looking beautiful and brand new. And there was a funny side effect that happened, though, with this job, because my dad loved cars. And he would often find himself in possession of cars that I would say were considered lost causes to their owners. So I'm kind of comparing this to, have you ever known someone that's taken in a stray animal and the poor thing just looks so homely, but they're showing everybody pictures, look at this beautiful baby, and everybody's thinking, that is the ugliest cat I have ever seen in my life. But to that person, they're like, this is the most lovable, gorgeous creature on God's green earth. That was my dad with cars. And so we had several of these borderline irredeemable cars in our yard. 4, 5, 6, 7 of them at a time. And when I was a young kid, I loved it because I would get in those cars and I would play and I would daydream and I would read. And some of them were actually drivable. We had one that was my sister's and I's favorite. It was a deeply, deeply unattractive brown and white van. And what we loved about it is that it had captain's chairs in the middle and they weren't bolted to the floorboard. So we would argue over who got to sit in those seats because as we're driving along, and if my dad got an enthusiastic brake need, we would go flying. So I understand this is 2023's safety nightmare, but in 1985, honey, that was good times. Good times to be had. And so as I got a little older, though, that van wasn't so cute. It became a little embarrassing. And as I began to be a teenager and get on the school bus with other kids, I was like, they don't have all these things in their yards. I began to become a little self-conscious of it. And one day, my dad and my sisters and I, we were in a walk. We used to love to go on a walk in this neighborhood across the street from us. And this was a much more affluent neighborhood than our street. And it even had an affluent name. It was called Golden Grove. And it was right. And to me, the houses in Golden Grove sparkled. The yards were well manicured. They were beautiful, beautiful homes. I remember one time in there making a comment, they have bigger mailboxes than us. And my dad said, that's because they got bigger bills. Which maybe is true. But one day we're walking in there, and I'm just thinking, look how beautiful their car-free yards are. And, thinking this in my head. And all of a sudden I hear my dad say, all these fancy houses, and none of them have as many cars as we do. So, same cars, different story, right? So we could see this in our lives too, that two people can have a very similar experience, but depending on the story they're telling about it, they're having a completely different experience, right? And so it's not always even the content of the story that matters. It's how we are caught in it and how we can find ourselves triggered or feel some friction around it. And even though sometimes these beliefs that we have around them and the stories we're telling, we know they're not really fun to tell, sometimes releasing them comes with a bit of pain. Michael Beckwith said this. He says that pain comes because the ego doesn't know the difference between annihilation and transformation. So, yeah, well, that's what I felt when I heard it, Joanne, because it's so true. We know there's something within us that wants to release, but there's this other part of us, but who will I be without that? We don't know that there's something better for us on the other side of this belief. So Jesus used a lot of parables in his teaching ministry, and of those parables, 13 of them he dedicated to the topic of the concept of the kingdom of heaven as he saw it. The kingdom of heaven not as a geographical destination or place to get to in the future, but a place of consciousness of our own wholeness, the realization of our oneness with God that we can access right here, right now. And because you can think about this idea, but it's hard to even put words to it. So how to describe the indescribable? So he would describe it by comparing it to something. And one of these, he said, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who is in search of fine pearls. And when he found one of great value, he went away, sold everything he had, and went and bought it. So Cliff notes, if you want the kingdom of heaven, you got to get rid of some stuff. Right? He couldn't get this pearl unless he was able to release whatever it was that was keeping him from feeling like he could access the kingdom of heaven. And this is where that annihilation feeling can come in. Because some of these beliefs and stories that we've had, we've been letting them run for so long, so long, that we feel like they are an intrinsic part of who we are. So it does take a lot of bravery to sometimes look in the mirror and say, who would I be without this? Who would I be without the thought that everybody else gets to go first and I can just have the leftovers if I'm lucky? Who would I be without the thought that all the good in my life can be taken away from me if I make a mistake or I screw up or don't meet this person's approval? Or who would I be without the thought that my good comes through this particular job, through that particular, being with this particular partner, by having this set of approval? Who would I be without that? And it can feel like pain sometimes to let that go. But there's freedom on the other side of it. Because when we don't cling to those things anymore, when we allow ourselves to be opened up by it, there's a space. I spent a lot of time in my life thinking that if I just did enough out here to prove that I was worthy enough, hustled enough, made enough people happy, that I would know my own worth. And I only had that completely and totally wrong. Only completely and totally. Just that. Because the truth is, what we need to know first is our own worth. Because the world will give us mixed messages every day. Sometimes the world will tell you you're the greatest thing in the world. You can do no wrong. And you can go out and be the exact same way the next day. And guess what? You don't get such rave reviews. Right? So one of the things Reverend Michael mentioned a couple weeks ago was a classic book, Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth, and it is a great book. And these old school Unity teachers, they just called it like they saw it. They don't pull any punches. And Eric Butterworth said this. Well, first he said that we are spiritual beings within the allness and the infinite mind. And he said this about making a demonstration or manifestation. He said, get your mind off the demonstration. Well, we think at Unity, what? We're all about demonstrating things. He said this, quit trying to act like you're coaxing a magic show out of a reticent God. That's not how it works. You don't have to bargain with God. Get your mind first on the depth that is within you. Get your mind first on the allness that is within you. And then he said, and the demonstration will begin to make you. You don't have to make the demonstration. The demonstration will make you. And it will arise in you as a profound sense of gratitude. It will arise in you as a profound givingness of generosity. You will feel more generous than you have ever felt before when you get that I am an expression of infinite supply, of infinite wisdom, of infinite love. I'm not just this little thing running around, running into things, running into obstacles. So the demonstration will begin to make you. So like I said, about 10 years ago, I came here, and I think, well, I'll say this. Recently, this could be a whole nother message, I've been thinking about get ready to run again. And one of the things, I'll let you know how this works, is I'm like, it's hot. That's an excuse, and I don't like to run inside. So I've been trying to hype myself up by listening to podcasts of runners. Maybe that's somehow by some kind of osmosis, I'll get some running training in there. And one of my favorite ultra marathoners, he was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they said this, really resonated with me. They said that we often way overestimate what we can do in 10 days. We want instant gratification, right? We want to see a difference, but we vastly underestimate how much we can transform in 10 years. And the transformation in truth can happen in an instant. The realization of wholeness can happen in an instant. But in this world of form, in this world out here, there are days when you're going along and it feels like you haven't made much progress. I know I've been there. I thought, really? I thought I've been meditating for years now and all this, and this little thing made me mad? I thought that wasn't going to happen anymore. And there have been times in the last 10 years that I've been in this spiritual community that I've had the most exquisite, no words for them, experiences of the goodness of God showing up in my life. And there have been other times where I've been trudging through the mud and the muck of my own consciousness. And what I've come to know is that mud and muck is no less holy than the exquisite moments. What I used to think there were moments that were sacred because I was connecting with Spirit or connecting with God. Yes, they're beautiful, but all this other junk is sacred too. Every interaction is sacred. So when I can know this spiritual work too becomes more holy. It's always been holy, but I can see it as holy, and it becomes lighter. So I don't know where you're at in all of this, if you're on a mountaintop moment or you're in a mud and muck moment. But what I do know for you is that you deserve nothing less than total freedom. Nothing less. And I also know and affirm that there's nothing stopping you. There's nothing in your way from experiencing it. And while I'm so grateful to be a minister now, one of the things that occurred to me as I was finishing my training, because when you're in ministerial school training, I was thinking, I'm learning the skills I need to be a minister. I don't know why I would do that. Nobody needs a minister to do that. But that's what I thought. And then it occurs to me, I have nothing to give to you that you don't already have. But I can support you in, and it's my great honor to support you in, selling all the stuff that's getting in the way of you knowing your own wholeness, of you experiencing your pearl of great value. So Gary, I would like to go ahead and take this into prayer. So right here, right now, I just invite us, come back into that sweet, sweet space of meditation, that space of where we know our connection with the divine. And what I know and affirm for each person hearing this today is that there is nothing standing in the way of you experiencing the allness, the fullness, the abundance, the absolute infinite supply of God's good. And that right here, right now, you are invited to just set aside all that stuff you were never meant to carry anyway. all the stories that have kept you from realizing the good that you already are. We can just lay them all down. And when we've gone away and sold all that stuff, we are now opening ourselves up to receive our pearl of great value, to reside in the kingdom of heaven. And so it is. Amen. Thank you all for letting me be with you today. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Watching this message today, I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.